right, now it's time. It's time for us to talk about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Wait, we don't have that right. It's Honor Among Thieves. Is it colon?
It would be colon, I guess. I suppose.
All right. And is it an ampersand? See, I get really anal about that stuff. Are they spelling out the word and, or is it an ampersand? I got it. I fixed it. It's all good. It's all good. All right, there we go. Because also there's a movie, the original Dungeons and Dragons movie is just called Dungeons and Dragons. This is Honor Among Thieves. So
yes. But it is an ampersand and it is a colon.
Okay, cool. All right. Alan, I was in a packed theater in Burbank at the AMC 16 in the Dolby Digital Cinema, one of the best screening experiences in Los Angeles. This screen is so great. The comfy chairs, you can kind of kick back. The seats are heated should you enjoy some additional heat while you're sitting watching your movie. I saw this movie in a packed theater.
I did not.
I thought it was not a great movie, but I also had fun. Alan, tell us about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
Okay, so if you follow me on social media on Twitter and Instagram, as of yesterday morning, my screening of Dungeons and Dragons, I was still the only person who had a ticket for that movie. Before I went, I checked. There was one other person, so the ticket had doubled. And then when I showed up, 7 people showed up, and they all decided to sit around me.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. It was just like stop. They were just talking, and so yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. What can we say about Dungeons and Dragons? I had fun.
Well, tell us.
Yeah,
tell
okay.
us a little bit of the story.
Tell a story. You're gonna make me. So here, let me. I just want to get the names right here. So essentially, we have the Master Thief. Let's see, Edgin. I don't even know the names of these characters. Helga was the only name I came away with. But you had Edgin, and I can't even pronounce these things. Played by Chris Pine.
All right, how about you know what? Let's do this. How about I'll do this. Let's just go back to this here.
Yeah. No, but I'll just mention Edgin. It starts with his wife getting fridged, and then you know you're off to a good start.
Look, Dungeons and Dragons is about a team of thieves who are unlikely friends that come together. It focuses on Chris Pine's character. His name is Edgin or Edgin. Excuse me, is Edgin or Edgin? So, anyways,
exactly.
His wife. He loses his wife tragically. And he's telling this story. He raised his daughter, who also was among the band of likable thieves. Michelle Rodriguez plays Holga, who's a warrior. I feel like she's channeling Gina Carano's character from The Mandalorian, right? Cara Dune. She just sort of gives off that vibe. There's also Simon, who is a wizard with skills might be a little lackluster. There's Doric, who is they give it a different name, but she's effectively a changeling. She can change into a snake or a rat or an owl bear, right? And these unlikely thieves, they come together, and the opening of the movie is Edgin and Holga are in prison. They break prison, and it starts off kind of fun because the way that the story is told is he's telling their story, how they got to prison, and he keeps backing up and telling the story in kind of a funny way because he's waiting for Jarnathan to show up, which is a giant bird-like character, and they use Jarnathan to escape the prison. Then they come to find out that Hugh Grant's character, his character is Forge. He was part of their band. They go to visit him. And Edgin wants to get his daughter back, and Forge is kind of he's loathsome. He's a con man, and he is basically become the adoptive father to Chris Pine's kid, and he is a horrible human being, and they want to expose him and take him down, right? So that's without, I don't want to spoil any of the details. I'll just give you that. There's a
Did you
character.
mention all the witches and wizards, though?
What's that?
The witches and wizards, they're the ones who are kind of behind
Yeah,
Forge's
well, they're
rise to
behind
power.
Forge. They've kind of uplifted Forge to power, and they're using him because they plan to turn the townspeople into zombies. And all Forge cares about is stealing all the wealth and treasures from the city. So they're on a mission to stop this from happening. This unlikely foursome: Edgin, Doric, Holga, and Simon.
Simon, yeah.
So and you know what? I'm not going to tell you this movie's great. I'm going to say that it's a fun adventure. I'll say, you know what? It's better than Ant-Man 3. Okay? It's entertaining. And there's some things that are very clever. At one point, they have to go interrogate a bunch of dead soldiers who fought in a battle in order to acquire this helmet. They want to find out the location. Where is this helmet that will give Simon the ability to have all these incredible powers as a wizard? But in order to locate the helmet, they gotta find out where it is. It was lost in this battle. So they wake up these soldiers. They can only ask them 4 questions before they die, before they'll like be dead forever. And each one kind of has a piece of the story. It's very funny. I will say this. This is more of a comedy than an action adventure. The comedy, I think, takes center stage. There's a scene where Michelle Rodriguez's character as Holga goes to visit her old lover, played in a cameo by Bradley Cooper. And Bradley Cooper is this tiny person. So not a hobbit, but he's like in scale about half her size. And it's just played for humor. And then basically he ended up like with a girl that looks just like Holga. So it's like he's
Except,
into large women,
bigger.
except maybe even a little bigger. It's look, this is funny. In tone, it reminds me of a movie that I loved as a kid. You may be familiar with this film. It's The Sword and the Sorcerer, directed by Albert Pune, starring Lee Horsley. I loved the movie The Sword and the Sorcerer. The thing that was different about Sword and the Sorcerer was a little bit like Indiana Jones in a fantasy world, except it was R-rated, it was incredibly violent and gory, and it had nudity. And I loved that movie. As a kid, I loved The Sword and the Sorcerer. Unfortunately, while Dungeons and Dragons does have the sort of mix of adventure, humor, fantasy elements, it doesn't. It's not. There's no nudity, and it's not gory at all. I mean, I would say that this is very family oriented.
Mhm.
It's more for kids than anything else. So, Alan, what are your before we get, I do have one thing that I thought was really cool. Someone told me this, my friend Paul Salamoff last night. They're like, did you notice all the Easter eggs? And I'm like, well, I didn't. I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons like player. I didn't watch the animated show. There's this maze at the end. I thought the stuff with the maze, like a lot of the adventure aspects, the portal that they had the hither thither stick. I thought the portal thing was kind of cool, the way that they used that to pull off, to do their thieving. It plays into the end of the film. They have this maze that they're going through. There's a bunch of captured people in this maze, in the captured thing. It's all characters from the animated show. So if you watch the animated show, that's like a reference to it. So look for that. I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
But that's sort of like, look, my expectations for this movie, having seen the trailer too many times, was pretty low. It was fine. Was it great? No. I had a good time. I had a good time watching this film, and I'm not embarrassed by it. But it does remind me of what I think is a better movie, which is The Sword and the Sword. Go watch The Sword and the Sorcerer. That movie is fantastic. It's got pirates, and there's orgies, and there's nudity. Watch Conan if you want serious Conan the Barbarian. Okay? It's gory. There's nudity. It's like, look, if you have swords, arms are going to get chopped off. Heads are going to get chopped off. Although there is like a head that does get chopped off in Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. But it's not particularly gory, right? It's very PG-13, very light, definitely for kids. But Alan, your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, I'll go with Mega YouTube's 99 comment. Movie was mid as fuck. That's kind of how I walked away. I would say if you took my review of Shazam and applied it to this, it would be the exact same thing. I have fun, but what am I walking away with? What is my takeaway? There's nothing in this movie that I particularly remember or cherish coming out of it. I suppose I like the idea that this was a band of misfits who had to kind of rise above themselves to figure out how to win in the end. But then I thought a lot about, I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons since probably 40 years ago, since I was in high school. And, the movie felt very much like that, in the sense of here's a little premise. Here's me and my friends, and we're going to go on this little adventure, and we're just going to go from here to here to here to here until we finally figure out and solve the giant puzzle that is this campaign. And that's kind of how this movie felt. It's just a cast of characters, all with different abilities, different skill levels, different, Dungeons and Dragons, and they're just kind of going from point to point. And and the graphics are amazing. The action was fun. I don't think you could say that Chris Pine was emasculated at all in this movie. And so, but the thing is, the movie is very mediocre. And I just walked away thinking, this movie should have been better than it was. I think what makes this better than Ant-Man is the fact that 60% of it was practical, or 50% of it, I'll say. It's kind of like, and then the other thing that is similar to Ant-Man and Shazam is that there's this world we're in, and I don't exactly know the rules of the world. It's just a world full of characters with powers, with magical powers, with whatever. But what is this world really about? And again, I think Dungeons and Dragons is very much that nature, where you go on a campaign, you're not caring about how the world is set up, who's in charge, who's not, who are the oppressed, who are the oppressors. You're just kind of going in doing this adventure, and that's kind of what this movie is.
Yeah, well, look, here's my sort of final thought on it. It's not a terrible movie. It's better than Shazam 2. It's better than Ant-Man 3. Could you argue that it's mid? Sure. Yep. But when I go to In-N-Out to get a burger, I'm not expecting filet mignon from Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Okay? Ruth's Chris. It's always like a weird thing to say. So my expectation was already low going in the movie, and it was fine. In fact, there are parts that I enjoyed. I think it was clever. I think it was definitely written for comedy. I think the characters are likable. I enjoyed Michelle Rodriguez. I thought she was really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's a badass in this film. She's kind of a badass in
every film.
Every film, she's kind of always plays kind of a badass. But and then Chris Pine, people might argue, was Chris Pine emasculated? Not really. He's a bard. He's not a warrior. Okay. Michelle Rodriguez's character, Holga, she's a warrior. That's what she does.
She's the heavy in the film. Yeah. She's the muscle of the crew.
Right. Chris Pine sings songs. Like, he literally is like a bard who's supposed to sing songs, and he's a thief, but he's not a warrior. Okay. Simon is a wizard. Everyone fulfills their role. There is a character. What's his name? I want to make sure I get
Jenk. That one.
Yeah. Jenk. Is it Jenk?
I think so.
Jenk, played by Rej Jean Page. And is he from Bridgerton?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Anyways, his character was hilarious because he's like this ultimate, he does everything right. He's so good. He's like
he's good. A paladin, for crying out loud.
He's like exactly. It's like, I must do everything well. I just do everything great. Nothing phases him. They're in the midst of he's a strong male character, but it's funny because he's so over the top. I thought it was hilarious. So his character was like a good, he plays it completely straight. This is okay. There's a difference between the comedy in in Marvel movies as opposed to this, which is why I think that this sort of is better than Shazam 2, Ant-Man 3, all that, is that it seems like the stakes do matter here, right? It seems like the stakes do matter. Like the characters, at least when they're
Yes and
in it,
no.
care about it. What do you mean yes and no?
Yes and no. I mean, the stakes were big, but they kind of solved in very quick and not big stake ways.
Well, look, my 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 expectation,
Yeah.
yeah, my expectations were low, and it was fine. I like, look, it was fine. Was it? Is a movie that's it's not going to change your life. This movie is not going to change your life. You're not gonna walk away from it and think, just it's fine. Let's go to
Well,
your
and don't forget the big question. Is it woke?
yes.
No.
Well, zero. I would
0.
say. I mean, does it have? The problem is that people misinterpret, like it's got all these strong female characters and it's got some male characters that don't act characteristically like badass warriors. I mean, I would disagree. There are many warrior male characters in the film. The other thing I will say about that comment, that emasculation comment, came from the screenwriters who were being interviewed. By the way, no one cares what screenwriters think. It's very, I mean, what's funny is that screenwriters are rarely interviewed in, for films. These days, actually, they get interviewed more often, but they tend to say things that are kind of stupid. So when anyone says something stupid in an interview, I always question it. I always think to myself, it's not as bad as that person is saying. It's going to get blown out of proportion, and people are going to be way over putting way too much importance on an innocuous comment. It's an innocuous comment, and I guarantee you, knowing the personality of most screenwriters, those screenwriters were trying to pander to the interviewer. 100%. They were trying to pander to the interviewer to get in that person's good graces. So, because most people who are journalists are covering entertainment today are mostly, for the most part, woke. So what they'll do is they'll pander to that, and then something gets blown out of proportion, and then you see the movie and it isn't that at all. So there you go.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the issue was just the fact that Michelle Rodriguez played the muscle of the group, and quite frankly, she kind of earned that role. You buy into that the same way as if Gina Carano had played that role. You buy it, and and of course, Chris Pine is not the brute of the team. He's kind of the brains behind the team,
right,
and I think that's unfortunately that's kind of how the trailers portrayed it as Chris Pine's character being the weak one, because he was always kind of compared next to Michelle Rodriguez at that point.
Right. So,
but Dork, I mean, Dork is definitely not the heavy of it. She is kind of the the girl of the group, and is kind of played that way as well.
No, I like the dynamic that they had dated. Simon and Doric had dated, and then he had to level up. Simon had to level up as a wizard to win the girl. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, women kind of want that in their men.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.